Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Taylor Murphy. My talk is titled Move Data, Not Drama, Simplifying Your Workflow with Meltano. A little bit about me. I'm the founder and CEO of Arch, formerly known as Meltano. Previously, I was leading data teams at GitLab and a genetic startup in Nashville, and I got my PhD in chemical and biomolecular engineering. A little bit about Meltano and Arch. So Meltano is a very popular open source project. We have a large community of over 5,000 people, over 1,800 stars on GitHub. And it was incubated within GitLab since 2018. In 2021, we spun out as a separate company, now called Arch, and raised some VC backing. And there's been a lot of development on the Arch product, which is built on top of Meltano. Briefly on Arch, we are building an AI data analyst, which provides custom intelligence for your business. So with Meltano as the foundation, we have kind of 360-degree data integration. We can pull data from basically anywhere. We work with you to define your metrics and your KPIs so that the AI is really smart and understands what's happening in your business. And we back it up with a human in the loop so that you can have high degree of confidence in the analyses that the AI is working on. If you are interested in this, please come talk to me. But let's talk a little bit more about Meltano. So what is Meltano? At the end of the day, it is a Python package, but it is a single tool that should provide the majority of your data integration, data platform needs, whether it's extraction, loading, transformation, orchestration, and monitoring. Meltano works with a number of open source tools, and I'll explain how in a little bit. It is fully open source, so it is MIT licensed, as are many of the plugins that are working with Meltano. That makes it easy to avoid vendor lock-in, deploy how you want, and integrate with basically any other tool in your stack. It is developer friendly. So Meltano is very much a tool for data engineers. If you need a point and click user interface, Meltano is not the tool for you, but it is a command line interface tool primarily. And then there is also a directory of files and folders that Meltano works with as well, particularly in YAML. So if you're comfortable in YAML, Meltano will feel right at home for you. And then it's a modular tool as well. It's very easy to integrate and swap different connectors and different components within your Meltano project to build your ideal data stack. Some of the problems that Meltano is built to solve and why we built it. One, we started Meltano in 2018 when the modern data stack was and still is quite popular. So we saw all these different tools, they're spread out, and there was not one tool that kind of helped centralize configuration and management of the entire data stack. Meltano helps with that. There were challenges around having very complex pipelines, and these pipelines could cross all of these disparate tools as well. And with a centralized configuration with the Meltano, it was easier to understand what was happening across your entire data platform and have a single point of understanding and single pane of glass for what was happening for your data platform. We also needed a tool that was scalable, and the most scalable tools typically are done in code. And we have a lot of users who use Meltano to power data integration needs for their customers within their own production products. But also this platform can scale to thousands of different connectors. And we have seen very large companies use Meltano very successfully at a high degree of scale. It being open source, we wanted to avoid vendor lock-in for folks who use it, and people are very happy to use Meltano and deploy it for their company in very secure environments, air-gapped environments, because it is open source and they can inspect all the code. Then the final piece that we wanted to solve for was again, this monitoring and kind of debugging challenge. With everything being open source and having a central configuration control plane, it makes it easy to understand what's happening within your entire data platform and collaborate on it with your team. Some of the key features of Meltano that we talk about now, especially, are built around this core. So at its heart, Meltano is a data integration tool that works with Singer taps and targets. Singer is a data transfer specification that was started by Stitch back in the mid 2010s. Meltano kind of took up that mantle. We have an SDK around building new taps and targets or extractors and loaders. And we have hundreds of different connectors. And so Meltano is the easiest way to run these Singer connectors. We also integrate with dbt core for transformation, and it is a simple integration where there's no modifications made to the dbt experience. You can use the latest and greatest dbt version within your Meltano project and get some extra goodies around centralized configuration, management, installation, things like that. We also have out-of-the-box orchestration. We do work with Airflow, with Dagster, with Prefect, and you can set your simple data pipelines within the Meltano configuration and have these different tools execute them, or you can just instantiate Meltano from within Airflow, which is what a lot of people will actually do, or within Dagster as well. So it's very highly configurable to exactly the environment that you need. And lastly, we have Meltano Hub, which is a way to organize the kind of disparate community of community-built utilities and connectors across the entire open source ecosystem. So if you go to hub.meltano.com, you can view all of our plugins, our extractors, loaders, and utilities to see what's available within the Meltano ecosystem. Now, before I jump into the demo, I just want to give you a quick rundown of kind of the high-level architecture of Meltano. So there's three things to think about. There are plugins, the interface, and the backend. So plugins are all of the different packages and programs that are installed that can be installed by Meltano. The most common one are going to be extractors. These are packages that will extract data from different sources, Salesforce, LinkedIn, HubSpot, etc. You can go to Meltano Hub to view all of those. Then we have loaders where that data is sent to. We have all of the common data warehouses as well as some very esoteric ones. Utilities such as dbt, Airflow, Great Expectations. There's a bunch listed on the hub as well. And the last one that I'm not going to talk about in the demo are called mappers, but mappers briefly are a way to transform data in flight from an extractor to a loader. As I mentioned earlier, the interface for Meltano is the command line. There is no UI, but there's also YAML files that you can edit directly and can be version controlled within a Git repository. And the last piece that I'm not going to have time to touch on today is the backend. There is a system database which stores information about when you've run Meltano, the history and execution of your different pipelines, and there's different options for how that data can be stored. And there's also different ways to store incremental state between runs. So if you have a large backfill job, that state can be stored, and it can be stored locally, or it can be stored in the cloud on GCP, Azure, and AWS as well. Like I said, we're not going to have time to dive into that today, but you can check out our documentation to learn more about that. And so with all that kind of groundwork laid, I'd like to jump into a brief demo of some of the capabilities of Meltano, and then I'll showcase a larger project called our Squared project that we use at Arch to run our data platform. The first thing that we need to do before we can use Meltano is install it. Since Meltano is a Python package, we can just use UV, but you can also install it using pip or your favorite tool of choice. The next thing we can do is check that we have installed the latest version. In this case, the latest version of Meltano is 3.5.4, and we'll verify that here. So now that we have it installed, we can initialize our project. In this case, we'll call it demo, and we'll hit enter, and that will generate a new directory within the one we're already in. And in here is a number of new folders that Meltano has created. The most important file, though, is your meltano.yaml file. This is where all of the configuration is stored for Meltano, and it's where you can collaborate with your colleagues on different configuration definitions. So we'll cd into that directory, and before we can use Meltano, we need to install a plugin. So in this case, we want to move some data from, let's say, GitHub. So we'll install our extractor called tap GitHub. What this is doing is it's reaching out to the Meltano Hub API. Meltano Hub is where we store information about all of the plugins available to install via Meltano. There's helpful information on these different plugins as well, and you can link out from the command line here if you wanted to visit that. So now the extractor is installed, and you can see there's been an update in our meltano.yaml file. We have tap GitHub installed. It's the Meltano Labs variant. The variant means there's different ways to define the Meltano Hub connector. I won't get into that. And then we also have the pip URL here so we can understand how it's actually being installed by the program. Meltano manages all of the dependencies, so you don't have to worry about having isolated environments. Meltano will take care of that for you. The next thing we can do is actually invoke the tap here. And we're going to pass it the help command just to see what is available. So this is actually running the Python package for tap GitHub and outputting the output from that package here. So there's a lot of things we can do, but Meltano helps make a lot of that easy. So we now need to configure Tap GitHub to actually work. There's different options for how you can do that. Interactive mode is a really nice way to see all of the configurations available and actually have it help you step through them. So with any system that you're connecting to, especially if it's authenticated, you need to provide some sort of auth token or API key to actually make it work. With GitHub, we have an auth token here, and I've generated one just for this demo. Since it's a sensitive variable, you won't be able to see me pasting it in here, but we do ask you to repeat it so that it's confirmed. I've hit enter here, and you'll see that it was actually set in a .env file, and we can confirm that the environment variable here was set to this token, and no worries about leakage here. This has already been revoked. The next thing that we'll likely want to set is to specify how much data we actually want to pull over what time period. So item number 17 here allows us to set a start date for when the extraction should start from. So let's just pull for a few months. We'll go back to September 1st, set that here, and then we can actually go into our meltano.yaml and see that that configuration was set within the file. Since it's not sensitive, that's something that we would likely want to store in version control and actually collaborate with our team on, whereas the .env file is not something that you commit to a Git repository. That's why it's separate and secret. Now, interactive mode is just one way of setting configuration. You can do it from the command line, or you can actually just come in here and set it yourself. So we can see here listed that repositories is one configuration option. So I can come in here and just manually do it myself if I'm more comfortable directly editing the YAML file. So we'll pull data from the Meltano repo and the Meltano hub repo as well. So now that we've set each of those, we can actually review all of this configuration. So if we do Meltano config tap GitHub, this shows us what the configuration payload that's going to be sent to the Python extractor once it's invoked. So we can see here we have our auth token that's redacted since it's sensitive and we're printing it to the command line, the repositories that we've set up in here, as well as the start date. Now, the next thing that you want to specify when you're setting up an extractor is what data do you actually want to pull. These connectors can have access to a lot of different streams, APIs, and endpoints, so you'll want to specify what's to be extracted. The tap creators will often have a set of endpoints that they'll hit by default, and to view that, you can do Meltano select the extractor name and then just do -- list. And if we look here, there's a bunch of different things that are already selected: pull requests, reviews, project cards. This is way too much for what we actually need. So we can limit the scope of what's going to be pulled by doing Meltano select the extractor name, tap GitHub, and then let's just pull issues. You'll notice in the meltano.yaml file that it created this new key here, select, and said, hey, just get issues and get every column available with issues. And then if we run Meltano select tap GitHub list again, we'll see that the list is much shorter this time and it's only pulling issues. There's a few columns that are required, as this is the unique key for the issue. This is the updated at field. And so those are the ones you kind of have to pull whenever you're pulling data from the issues stream. So now with all of this defined, we can go ahead and invoke tap GitHub, and this will instantiate the Python package, pass in that config information, including the columns and tables to select, and data should just start flowing. And in fact, that is what we see. But all this is doing right now is streaming that to the command line. I'm going to go ahead and stop that. So we need a place to put it. So I'm going to add a loader here. I'm just going to use target JSON-L, and that will just write out the data into a new line delimited JSON format just for storage in a directory. But there's all kinds of loaders. Of course, any data warehouse you could imagine, local Postgres instances, CSVs, object stores, they're all listed on Meltano Hub. But for simplicity's sake, we'll just do target JSON-L here. You can see there's new key loaders under the plugins information. And then with all of that done, we can do now a Meltano run. We list the extractor where we want data to flow from. and the loader where we want data to flow to. So we'll go ahead and run this. And now we get some pretty colors on the command line, and we can see data and information that's streaming from GitHub and being written out into a JSON-L format. That will actually go into this output folder here, and you can see we have lots of nice info on all of the issues in the Meltano and the Hub repositories. A couple of other things to note here. By default, Meltano keeps track of incremental state. And so you'll see notifications in the command line here that the incremental state has been updated. So now if we were to run this again, it would keep track of that state information and pick up where it left off. Some things to note here. Meltano by default keeps track of incremental state, and you get this notification here that this incremental state has been updated so that future runs will only pull fresh data from that particular point. There's, of course, a lot more that you can do with Meltano, and I've only had time here to really brush just the very beginnings of what's possible with Meltano. And I real briefly want to share what a more complicated and mature Meltano project looks like. So here we have what's called our Meltano squared project. So running Meltano for the Meltano or Arch team. Within the data directory, this will look a little bit familiar. You'll see your meltano.yaml file, but instead of a lot of configurations being listed, we actually have references to other meltano.yaml files spread throughout the directory and the project. This makes it easy to isolate and organize your project so that you don't have one giant YAML file. You can have a bunch of smaller YAML files that are easy to parse and to process. Our extractors.meltano.yaml file here has a ton of different extractors from where we're pulling data. Again, this is all public. You can go to the Meltano squared repo and view all of this for yourself. And there's things in here that I haven't touched on. You can inherit configuration from different connectors, and we have an inherit from key here that does that. There's lots of other configurations that are possible, mappers that can edit data in flight, and there's just a lot of capabilities within Meltano as you start to get more comfortable with it. We mentioned transformations, so we use dbt for transformations, and within the transform directory here, this is just a standard dbt project. When you are installing dbt with Meltano, it is dbt core as you would install yourself. We just get some helpers with the transformers.meltano.yaml file here to specify different run patterns, different commands, different configurations, and also to confirm that we're installing the version of dbt that we actually want for our project. But again, this is a full dbt project.yaml. All of our models are defined in here exactly as you would if you were using dbt outside of the Meltano context. And similarly, we also have orchestration set up with Meltano. We use Airflow for our orchestrator, and we can define a lot of schedules and pipelines within the Meltano project as well. These get run as Airflow DAGs. Most of our pipelines are relatively straightforward series running pipelines. So, this target, this extractor to this particular target, and we can set up these different jobs here and then run them on different cron schedules, and Airflow will pick those up and run with them. Overall, it's a pretty mature example of how to run a Meltano project, and we're quite proud of the capabilities that are within the platform and powering all of our internal data platform needs. The last thing that I want to show here is the Meltano Hub. So the Meltano Hub is a directory of all of the plugins that are available for installation within the Meltano ecosystem. You can come in here and start searching for any connectors that you might be interested in. So GitHub is listed here, Facebook, whatever you might be interested in extracting from. So if I go into GitHub here, there's information about how to use this particular plugin, information about its stability and usage across the ecosystem, the last time it was updated, how many stars it has, and it also lists a lot of the settings that are available. You can also view all of the utilities that are available. So like I mentioned, we have good integration with dbt, but also you can run Great Expectations, Airflow, Dagster, all these different tools within the Meltano platform as well. And then of course we have different kinds of loaders for any sort of destination, whether it's Snowflake, Redshift, ClickHouse, wherever you want to put your data, Meltano can absolutely support that. So definitely check out Meltano Hub. And if you don't see something, definitely reach out to the community and reach out to us, and we can work on adding that to the available library. So with the demo done, I'd like to thank you for your time and attention.